Dune Part 2, the sci-fi epic that has grabbed the attention of our society in a deeply significant way. What does its popularity tell us about the psychology of current times? Just a quick reminder to like and subscribe as it helps the channel greatly. Now, back to the video. Paul Atreides finds himself at the heart of the Fremen world. Within this world there is a division, those who believe in the Messiah and those who believe it's a story simply created to control the people of Arrakis. Paul knows that his mother, Lady Jessica, was a part of this messianic story being spread to serve the agenda of the Bene Gesserit. So Paul himself dismisses the idea of him being a Messiah and knows it's just the strategic power play of the Bene Gesserit. In fact, this is part of what allows him to connect with Chani. She adamantly believes that the story of a Messiah is simply a manipulation tactic to enslave her people, and believes her own people should free themselves. The Bene Gesserit seem to serve as a symbol of corruption in the meta-narrative in regards to religion, or at least the potential to use religion in a corrupt manner to achieve power. The Bene Gesserit are manipulating the Empire from the shadows. They are plotting the rise of Kwisatz Haderach, who they believe will bring forth a new level of human evolution, leading humanity to new heights. However, what is fascinating is that while the Bene Gesserit appear to place themselves above these religious narratives, they themselves are deeply driven by a religious belief in nature. Their belief is that they will bring forth a godlike mind with Kwisatz Haderach, who will bring a transformational era to their world. If we look at the overarching narrative of Dune Part 2, a core theme throughout the story is the God complex. So what is a complex? In essence, it is a web of associative thoughts and feelings in relation to an archetype. Typically, when one hears the phrase God complex, one thinks of an inflated ego. This is the ego's identification with divine-like qualities. However, the term God complex actually encapsulates a lot more. It's one's entire associative relationship with the God archetype. With this in mind, Dune Part 2 reveals a lot of layers to the collective God complex. The first layer is demonstrated by the deep division between the Fremen in their beliefs. There are the Southern fundamentalists who are deeply invested in the story of the Messiah. Then there are the other Fremen who laugh and roll their eyes at this. In fact, Stilgar, who is one of the Southern fundamentalists, is laughed at by the audience for his ability to believe so deeply in Paul as the Messiah, even in the face of contradictory information. In the meta-narrative, this reveals an aspect of the collective God complex that is deeply cynical. It imparts a humorous and almost mocking perspective of religious fundamentalists and a distrust of religion in its susceptibility to be used as a tool of manipulation by the powerful. This is illuminated by the reality of the Bene Gesserit being behind the messianic story, which they themselves spread across Arrakis. In fact, this is what makes Stilgar so humorous to the audience, because the mystique of Paul's character is deeply undermined in the knowledge of the Bene Gesserit's orchestration of his story. Yet despite this, there is actually still great anticipation and a lingering question of what Paul will become. This is because despite the reality of the Fremen's messianic story being undermined, the Bene Gesserit's plans still point to an emergence of a super being who will bring transformation. So even with the knowledge that the Bene Gesserit orchestrated the messianic story, the actual creation that they are trying to bring forth still echoes the same mysterious messianic principle. This reveals another fascinating layer to the God complex, that perhaps there is more beyond what we know. It reveals some ambiguity and curiosity towards the great unknown and the potential of it. This ambiguity continues into the theme of faith. There is the vulnerability and mocking of it in the form of the Southern fundamentalist single-minded belief. But even the Reverend Mother in The Emperor's Daughter acknowledged the power of faith. She tells her father not to underestimate it. Yet not out of religious respect for faith, but rather as a powerful tool to achieve their own agenda. This of course plays into the more cynical dimension of the God complex, and its reminder of religion's susceptibility to being used as a way to manipulate the masses. Yet the presence of faith in the story also opens up something a little more mysterious. You see, the Bene Gesserit spend generations carefully orchestrating the birth of Kwisatz Haderach, and they manipulate and take advantage of the phenomenon of faith. And yet this eventually grows beyond their control. Paul's transformation into Kwisatz Haderach moves beyond their plans and agenda. In other words, the super being they brought forth has his own plans, which clash with the Bene Gesserit's. What's fascinating about this is its somewhat paradoxical implications about faith and the God complex. The cynicism in the meta-narrative is outlined by the fact that the Bene Gesserit believe they can manipulate faith to their own ends, and that their clever orchestrating is the only reason for the belief in a messianic figure. Yet at the heart of their own plan to bring forth a superbeing who will bring transformation is an echo of the same religious messianic narrative which they themselves believe in. What's more is that it's this very phenomenon of faith in the messianic figure that they thought they could manipulate, which becomes the very force that causes them to lose control. In fact, this reveals another dimension to the God complex in the story, which appears to be a cautionary tale about hubris and the consequences of trying to play God. The Bene Gesserit are humbled by their pursuits of a godlike power in mind. They thought this was a power they could bring forth to further their own influence. However, Kwisatz Haderach moves far beyond their control, leading to war and destruction. Dune Part 2 reveals our deeply complicated collective God complex. It speaks to both the cynicism and the mystery. But what is clear is its warning against trying to manipulate it for one's own power and agenda, lest we fall into chaos and bloodshed. You've been watching Archetypal Wisdom. Remember to like and subscribe. Stay wise.